Hey, what's up, Geekscapists? Welcome to a brand new Geekscape podcast. We're going to be talking all about Spider-Man No Way Home with Ian Kerner. And if you're watching this, you're like, wait, what's going on? I listened to the live show and you got me, Jonathan. Yes, if you have not listened to Geekscape Live, our 15th anniversary of Geekscape celebration that we did as part of the all-day 15-hour live stream raising money for Big Brothers Big Sisters, Geekscapists. Like, what an event. Thank you so much for being part of that. We raised over $1,300 throughout the course of the day. Hopefully some of y'all signed up to be Big Brothers or Big Sisters. But wow, Friday was awesome. Go back and watch the live stream. Watch it on our Facebook, Twitch, our YouTube channels. Matt Kelly did a great job putting all those hours together. And of course, the big finale was the 1 hour here in Los Angeles Geekscape Live on stage. Spectacular. I don't know. I rename the thing every time I mention it. But what's great about it is that a lot of you were really like watching it and texting each other and active in the chat. And yes, I announced at the beginning of the show that I was quitting Geekscape. And then over the course of the show, you and all the things that you've done in this community and all the good that we've done together and all the shows that we've put on, not just mine, but all the Geekscape podcast shows, like that, all that stuff by the end of it, spoiler, convinces me to continue doing Geekscape. So here we are. And at the end of the show, if you go back and listen to it, like go back in the feed. And if you haven't listened to the live show, go back and listen to it. I'm very proud of it. And I think it's very representative of the kind of show that I'd like to do. And I've already started planning the next live event. But at the end of it, I said, no, let's do 15 more years. And then I said, we'll be right back in a few days with Ian Kerner and I talking Spider-Man No Way Home. And that is what you're watching right now if you're on Facebook, Twitch, Twitter, or YouTube. And maybe you're picking this up on the podcast feed. And this is where I throw out another spoiler warning and say, hey, we're going to be spoiling the heck out of Spider-Man No Way Home. So if you have not seen Spider-Man No Way Home, as many of y'all have said, because of Omicron fears or just not being able to get tickets, totally okay. Don't listen to this episode. Please go back once you've seen the movie and listen to this one, because Ian and I are going to waste no time in getting right down to all the things that happen in Spider-Man No Way Home, a movie that I think we both intensely disliked. We've not talked about whether or not we liked it, but I'm only guessing that if Ian has any of the same feelings I do, and that guy who's driving past my house, if Ian feels like I do, man, did we hate that Spider-Man movie? No, we didn't. Here's Ian right here. Ian Kerner, everybody.
Hey, seen anything good lately? I saw Power of the Dog last night.
I'm sure it was good. I like Jane Campion movies, and I like slow burn movies.
No, listen, a friend of mine said to me, he said we should really do a Geekscape podcast on Power of the Dog. So here it is, everybody.
Here it is, everybody.
Power of the
You thought
Dog,
we were talking
Geekscape.
about another Benedict Cumberbatch movie. No, okay. Let's actually talk about the Benedict Cumberbatch movie we want to talk about, which isn't a Benedict Cumberbatch movie. It's a Benedict Cumberbatch cameoing, guest starring in another person movie. Spider-Man No Way Home. I am going to make some bets because I'm a betting man. I'm going to make one big bet right here. I bet you liked this movie a whole lot, Ian.
Yeah, I feel like I liked it. I liked it. I thought it was pretty good. I mean, you know, it crosses off the boxes. You know what I mean?
It checks a lot of boxes.
Yeah, it's like it's entertaining, heartfelt. You know, it makes you think.
None of the Marvel movies make you think.
Many do. I mean, this one
Sure.
it really left you. You know, like I mean, days later you're still thinking about this movie.
That if that's what you're saying, yes, I agree.
All right, so here's the thing.
But let me tell you the thing.
Endgame.
Let me tell you the thing. As I'm watching this movie, Ian, I couldn't stop thinking about my buddy Ian, who was watching the movie, I think, at like 30, 40 minutes earlier than I was, because you were like a 30, 40 minutes earlier time watching the movie. And all I could think was, like, how happy you were at the same moments that I was happy, and how your heart must have exploded at so many of the moments that my heart was exploding.
Can we just say what was really, truly amazing, you know, and I'm going to use that word
spectacular?
All the things, sensational. It culminated all of Sony's movies.
Yes.
You know, like everyone talked about how Endgame did 10 years. This did 20 years pretty much.
That's a good point. Yeah.
You
In
know?
in a satisfying way. And if you're like myself, and the Amazing Spider-Man movies with Andrew Garfield are not your favorite films, and they're not my favorite Spider-Man movies. I've been critical of those films. Andrew Garfield in this movie was one of my favorite parts of this
great.
film, and
So
I loved
made
every
a
moment he
point,
was on screen.
as regular listeners know, I have a stepson, and I expose him to things. And you know, look, we knew going in, we knew the villains were in it. That alone, we're pretty sure that Tobey and Garfield were going to be in it. So we watched, for him it was the first time, and me rewatching, I rewatched the Tobeys and the Garfield movies very recently, and hadn't revisited them in a long time. And you know, I still really love those first two Tobey movies. I love, but I mean, I have to say, you know, they don't hold up in a great way. I mean, the whole Mary Sue thing about MJ is not an independent character. It's really, really disappointing how much that's the case. You know, and it's problematic now 20 years later.
Sure.
You know, it's still great movies, you know, but oddly enough, and I remember when we did the Geekscape on it, but I didn't dislike the third one as much as I had back then, you know, watching them as a piece, watching them all together. And then,
well, now that you have proper Venom movies that you've enjoyed and thought were incredible, thoroughly.
Well, that's a whole other thing, right?
You can actually go back on the feed to find out if that's true or not, Geekscapists.
They go on the feed all the way back to Spider-Man 3.
That's right.
You know?
That's right. And Ben Dunn reminded me of that. I had Gilmore and Sarah Ellis and a couple of the old Geekscapists at the live show on Friday night, and Ben Dunn texted me and said, I just remembered in 2007 when we did live interviews in line at UCLA's theater for Spider-Man 3. And yeah, we were so excited to see that.
You made fun of me because I was so excited for that movie, and I was so disappointed because the second one was so good, you know.
Second one
and
may still be my favorite Spider-Man movie. There's also like Spider-Verse in there too, but yeah,
it's tricky. And then you get to the Garfields, which, you know, so it felt pointless at the time, and still, I mean, listen, the first Garfield is an entertaining movie, but he just doesn't feel like Spider-Man in it. He's too cool, you know. I mean, I always said I thought he'd make a good adult Spider-Man, you know,
Sure.
Spider-Man mid to late 20s, you know, early 30s, and we got that in this movie.
And not only that, we got Tobey as the grown-up Spider-Man, who was even wiser and more, I think, kind of riddled by his time as Spider-Man, and
by the
haunted.
Way,
he was more haunted than Spider-Man.
Well, that was the problem. Is Tobey seemed too old at that point, but you know, make him the adult Spider-Man, and it really worked.
Yeah,
you know, it
Garfield
really worked.
I'm watching this movie, and they don't waste a lot of time in bringing in Doc Ock and the Green Goblin and the different villains. I love the introduction of the Lizard. I love the introduction of Electro. I like the redesign. I mean, they're course correcting
and
so many things.
Was great.
Yeah, they're course correcting a lot of films. Like they're course correcting the Garfield films. They're course correcting Spider-Man 3, the third Raimi movie. They're course correcting a lot, and I love the new Electro suit. I love Kane Marco and how he's kind of playing the middle. I love how Doc Ock turns into a bit of a hero because he was always Peter's ally.
Yeah, and he managed to find his way back even without the chip being fixed, which is great, right? So again, he did that again. It was great. That's the thing, is the flavor. Everything is consistent. You know,
but when the movie is about halfway, when you have Ned working the magic ring and calling out for a Peter, and when Andrew Garfield shows up, and when you see that it's the suit from Amazing Spider-Man and he hops through that ring, the roof blows off of that place.
Yeah,
like the theater goes nuts.
Yeah,
and then when you see the ring start up again and they're looking for one more Peter, and you know what's coming, like the place exploded.
Yeah. My theater as well, and that's the thing. First time since the pandemic that. You know, I mean, my frustration's been even when I've gone to things on opening night and it's like there's no energy in the theater, you know. And
well, sure,
this was like being back pre-pandemic opening night, you know, and it was an afternoon show, you know, because they did that 3:20, you know.
The numbers, Ian, are that this is the third biggest opening of all time. This is not just pre-pandemic numbers. This is the third biggest opening of all time.
Yeah.
And
it's only behind Endgame and Infinity War.
It's just incredible. I think that this might be my favorite MCU film, Ian.
I can see that.
I can't wait to see it again.
It has, it has so much heart. And that's the thing, my wife and I talked about this a lot about.
And we haven't even talked about the MCU aspects of the movie.
No. Tom Holland, though, is so good in the role, and Zendaya also. It's like, you really buy them that they're that age, and they're not, but it's really convincing. It really works, and you feel it and you feel for them, and you buy their relationship and you root for it, the movie hit on so many levels, it's, so the MCU of it, I mean, look, immediately what you have, the Doctor Strange of it is obviously the big thing. They took an interesting tact here, in the sense of, you have, just looking at these Spider-Man movies, Far From Home, you had the multiverse was teased, and then, and they backed off of it, which was frustrating, right? But then,
of course, why did they tease the multiverse?
Because Mysterio claimed to be from another Earth, and it was
You're
a lie.
Right. Yes, that is yes. Thank you for the refresher.
Right. So then obviously we get into the Spider-Verse, which is not MCU, but it's Sony, and, I think there was a lot to look how well that did, let's sort of jump on that bandwagon. I didn't know what they do here. So it was definitely interesting to me that things were pulled forward. You have to question, whether, the Loki of it, and that's my feeling, right? The Loki of it made it possible, right?
Well, if not, that is just the design of Phase 4.
Right.
And then we can talk about the street level characters that we're starting to have more focus on as well. But the focus of Phase 4 is the multiverse, and Loki's confirmed that. WandaVision's confirmed that. Ant-Man and the Wasp is going to confirm that further. Obviously, Doctor Strange too. Right. In this movie is a multiverse movie, but I got to tell you, I thought it was going to be a rip-roaring, rollicking trip through the multiverse with Spider-Man and his buddy Doctor Strange, and I actually love that it wasn't. That it probably saved that for Doctor Strange 2. And here we have the multiverse coming to the MCU as visitors, and a very limited number of visitors, which I thought was a great way to keep it controlled. And for a movie that's 2.5 hours, there's a lot in it. It's very economic, and it doesn't feel like it's 2.5 hours. I definitely could have tacked another 2 hours onto it because I loved watching this.
Yeah.
We knew the villains were going to be in it, and Doc Ock and Green Goblin are introduced. These villains are introduced very quickly, and then we have like a new approach to them that Peter doesn't want to defeat them or kill them. He wants to cure them. This is a pro-life movie.
But
it's like a anti-death sentence movie, I think is the way to say it.
But what this is very Spider-Man.
Yeah.
We in the comics in recent years, making the vow, no more deaths, like that's just him. And and maybe it's idealistic, but it's very true to the character.
Mm-hmm.
And they played with it. Having Tom Holland's version, so enraged and kind of forgetting it for a second, it's very reminiscent of the end of issue 121. After Gwen's dead, you think Spider-Man is going to purposely kill, Norman, and then that's not how it goes down, and it is more of the accident, a la the first Raimi movie, the first Tobey movie.
Mm-hmm.
But it's interesting, right, that these villains, kept dying, which I think was just, the cinematic thing that was done back in the day, right? So, to have them, work against that actively, to have Peter work against that actively, it's an interesting thing. I mean, where does that leave things? What are they going back to?
They're going back moments right before one of the next Spider-Mans punches them in the face, it seems like, because they were yanked moments before their deaths. I mean, Dr. Octopus is saying Peter destroyed my device.
He remembers that moment and then nothing. But
that's towards the end of the movie. That's right before he drowns.
Right. But
so good Doc Ock is about to show up and be like, just kidding, don't punch me in the face. Good Norman is going to come back and be like, I got to jump out of the way or I'm going to get stabbed by a goblin glider.
Right.
You know, and I forget what happened to Sandman. Did he get turned to glass? How did Sandman end up? I forgot his death in Spider-Man 3. You most recently watched it.
I don't know. Why am I blanking on that?
I think it was a critical death.
It became a whole big mishmash with Venom, right?
Oh yeah, the ending of that movie's rough.
Yeah,
you know, I'm going to credit that one to the writer's strike that happened, where they were not able to rewrite that script. I think Raimi's Spider-Man 3 definitely needed a little bit more work on that script. But writer's strike, and that's something that I've heard from people involved in the movie, is the writer's strike really hurt their ability to turn Raimi's Spider-Man 3
Sandman help with Venom. And then I remember they definitely took out Venom.
Mm-hmm. But I mean, we don't get Venom doesn't show up. We don't get Topher Grace showing up as a villain.
Which, I mean, listen, it's fine, but, you know, it's just, I guess, you know, the idea is that eventually he would have, right? Because, you know, and he knew Peter was, you know, that he was Peter Parker. Sure. Did we need Topher Grace's Venom?
No.
You know? So that gets into the questions, you know, who exists in the MCU, right? You know, do the Osborns exist in the MCU?
Okay. The very interesting that you're bringing that up, because Jim Pelgrinelli is watching this episode for some reason, and I know he hasn't seen Spider-Man No Way Home, so I don't know what he's doing.
Not be doing
Don't be watching this. But he does say Sandman didn't die in 3. He just dissipated and floated away. I thought that's what I remembered, Jim.
Yeah.
But then that breaks the rule in this movie that these characters died, and that when they're yanked into the MCU for this film, they are being yanked in right.
I don't think it's a rule. I think that Peter's finding out a lot of them did, so therefore he's looking to change it. Doesn't mean they all had to have, right?
Okay, so the question of whether or not the Osborns exist in the MCU prior to Norman showing up in this movie, or having, you know, the Chris Cooper character of Norman Osborn showing up in Amazing Spider-Man, it gets a little messy with the Sony stuff, because we've seen in the Craven or the Morbius trailer, there's an Oscorp building, and Morbius exists in the same universe that the Venom films take place in, which I'm guessing the Craven film is going to take place in. There is definitely an Oscorp in that building, or there's definitely an Oscorp building in that universe, and that is also a universe, if you could, you know, look at the Morbius trailer, where Adrian Toomes exists, the Vulture from the MCU, from Homecoming.
So here's the thing, that was certainly titillating, you know, but the bottom line is, you know, in a post-Loki perspective, he can be a variant, you know. There could be an Adrian Toomes in more than one universe. It doesn't mean he's the MCU's one. And that's the thing. We'll get the references, right? You know,
so the Michael Keaton,
jail, you know, and why, if he is, and all of those things.
So the Michael Keaton that we see hinted at the Morbius trailer may not be our Michael Keaton.
Right.
Toomes. Could be Bruce Wayne. That's stupid. It will not be Bruce Wayne.
It's going to be Bruce Wayne.
Okay, so Ian.
Maybe it's Birdman.
so does it get messy with the I mean, we'll know when we see Morbius in like a month, but does this stuff get messy? And maybe we don't talk about this yet because it's part of the mid-credit scene as well, because that's a Venom related mid-credit scene. But where do we want to go with this conversation? Because there's a lot to talk about, and there's a lot that we love. Does Osborn exist?
Starting at the beginning, you know, the setup of the movie, you know, obviously it picks up immediately off of where the last movie ended. You know, Peter's been basically set up by Mysterio. I thought that they just kind of very quickly dispelled it, right? Was it too quick? I mean, it's not a short movie. Just that, oh yeah, no, never mind. You know, so obviously the giant reveal, Matt Murdock's his lawyer.
That was awesome, and we knew it was coming. If you have been on the internet in the last 6 months, you were pretty sure that Charlie Cox's Daredevil was going to show up in Far From Home or No Way Home. And dude, we got 2 Netflixes in 1 week, because Hawkeye episode 5 gave us the best Kingpin as well. And it's like, okay, 2 Netflix Daredevil characters appearing back in the MCU in 1 week. It just makes my head explode, and I'm super happy. And we'll be talking about, you and I, Ian, will be giving it another week before we talk about Hawkeye after we watch episode 6.
And by the way, there's some speculation about potential crossover. I was surprised to see the Rogers musical in this, because one of the things they did with Hawkeye which made sense after episode 5, was they've set Hawkeye 2 years ahead of after Endgame.
Okay, well, this is going to get messy because we have to think about the blip and how that
So
affected Far From
Hawkeye's
Home.
going into it's the end of 2024. It's going into 2025.
Okay, Hawkeye's end of 2024, going into 2025, and that is Christmas, and this is Christmas. So this is roughly around the same time. So this is.
But no, I think this is a couple years before, because it wasn't Far From Home was set right after everyone came back from the blip. It's months later.
Okay, so Rogers the Musical has a very long Broadway run, is what I'm going to give it.
I would have thought Rogers the Musical. I was surprised to see Rogers the Musical on this. I would have thought it took a couple years for them to get it on.
Yeah, there's a Rogers the Musical billboard up right here. And so that got thrown up right after Endgame. Like they were like, hey, we got to pay tribute to Steve Rogers, and we got to throw this up. So, okay, so Rogers the Musical is happening.
Haven't we seen elsewhere that Far From Home was 6 months after?
I can't keep it straight. Like I need one of those like internet charts where somebody.
So when the movie opens, it's right after Far From Home, but some time goes by over the course of the movie, right?
This film, no, but when they're swinging away from the announcement that Peter Parker is Spider-Man in the public thing, that's when they pass the billboard for Rogers the Musical.
So I think it's about 6 months, right? Isn't that what they've established previously?
Let's give it 6 months.
So
but yes, then time goes by as Peter is applying to college, and they're all applying to college. That is months.
Well, by the way, so people have said it's 2 years, but I guess is 2 years right? Because if it's Christmas time, and it was, we established already 5 years later, 2023 was Endgame, right?
Okay.
So even that, maybe it isn't 2 full years. Maybe it's really only a year and a half that Hawkeye is, a year and a half after Endgame. The point is that the producers of Hawkeye have said that it's 2 years later, and that becomes relevant because of Yelena. Because here's a quick spoiler for Hawkeye. Should I not say it?
Yelena blipped.
Yelena blipped, exactly. So it's important that it's some time afterwards, because there needs to actually have been time that she worked for Valentina.
Yes. And Yelena, we'll talk about Hawkeye, but Yelena is also not the only one who blipped. And again, I'm giving months and months to them, to this montage in No Way Home where they're applying for college and trying to get college just to respond and stuff like that. I'm giving them a nice fall. Like I'm saying listen, they went on a summer trip to Europe. I think the ending of that movie is a late July, early August.
Then they're starting school, so they're in.
And now we have a Christmas movie. Now,
right.
So I am saying that that No Way Home takes place over 5-6 months.
Okay. Or something like that.
And that'll give you a pretty good window for Yelena to work with Valentina. And
I think it still sets it a year before Hawkeye.
Okay. Listen, Rogers had a really good run, okay?
Yeah.
Has a really good run. But what I'm saying now is Yelena was not the only important character that blipped. We saw Doctor Strange blip. Right. And it actually changed a lot.
By the way, and I love that, we've been seeing Wong show up.
Wong is showing up in Shang-Chi.
I don't think he was in Eternals, though. I think.
How dare you, Ian? Don't you joke with me? Oh, go back and listen to our Eternals review if you want to hear our thoughts on it and how Jonathan, his major faux pas on that one. But yeah, Wong's been showing up and kind of doing the cameos in other Marvel movies.
But suddenly it makes more sense that it was Wong and not Doctor Strange at the end of Shang-Chi, right?
Yeah, he is the Sorcerer Supreme. Because technicality, when your Sorcerer Supreme blips away for 5 years, you kind of have to find another one. And that's Wong. And I love that Wong is the Sorcerer Supreme, and that Steven's just kind of butthurt about the whole thing. So we have the Sanctum Sanctorum, and it's like run by Wong. Steven's got his downstairs area with his goatee just for men dye, which was hilarious because they end up using it on the costume, on the Spider-Man costume. They use like the beard dye that Steven uses for his goatee on the Spider-Man costume, because I'm watching the trailers and you're seeing that badass black Spider-Man suit, and then you realize, oh, they just dyed the Spider-Man suit after they turned it inside out.
Yeah.
Because it got covered in green paint, because everybody hates Spider-Man at the beginning of this movie because he killed Jake Gyllenhaal. Everybody hates Spider-Man at the beginning of this movie.
Right.
And they're like, you killed Mysterio, Spider-Man's a villain. And I kind of like that Peter spends 5 months or so of this movie with Spider-Man being a villain. And he's like,
Well,
okay, that's enough. It's affecting my friends now. And I got to fix this.
And it's the J. Jonah Jameson hate campaign that is classic
Totally.
Spider-Man, right?
Yeah, so I'm loving this. Things start getting a little silly. This is where Jonathan starts to believe that Spider-Man and Doc Strange are going to go on a road trip across the multiverse, and I'm so happy they don't. I'm happy that the multiverse starts throwing cameos at them, and it really starts creating the problem in this movie is like, hey, you got to put a cap on these villains showing up because it won't end. And it puts a little bit of a ticking clock on it. And obviously the ticking clock that Spidey's got to solve is I'm not sending them back until we've cured them. And I like that storyline because he's collecting villains. Meanwhile, you have Ned and MJ's storyline where they're collecting Peters.
Right. Well, that ultimately happens, right?
And that was awesome. Along the way, you get some really awesome fan service, like you get Norman Osborn saying, I'm a bit of a scientist myself. I'm something of a scientist myself. Loved it. Howled. Later on, when you have the 3 Peters collected and Ned says, Peter, and they all point to each other.
Yeah, it's so funny.
Right. That was amazing and spectacular. So the fan service
By the
was
way,
high on
speaking
this.
of the conversation about with Toby having to give the pep talk to Andrew Garfield and the whole thing, you were amazing. You know?
Yeah.
It was so funny.
I think it's worth the ticket price just to watch the conversation where they explain that Toby's Spider-Man can shoot the webs naturally.
Oh
and
my God.
The other two have to create web devices.
Right. And of course, because we remember, all the controversy over that.
Mm-hmm.
And, and obviously there was the implied, nocturnal emission thing of it, right?
Hilarious.
And, when they're asking, does it come out anywhere else? Oh my God.
Hilarious. The writing in this movie is incredible. And not just the comedic stuff, not just the stuff that's like the fan service and the Easter eggs, but the treatment of Aunt May. And this is a major spoiler. And I see both Jim Pelgrinelli and Big Yanks in the comments, and I know neither of them have seen this movie, so y'all are messing up because Aunt May dies.
Yeah. So
and the Goblin kills her, and it's hardcore and awesome. And I know we love the new Electro suit and the treatment of Electro, but seeing the Goblin properly,
but more to the point.
Awesome.
More to the point. The movie spends some time on Peter and responsibility, and you realize, because we were never sure. There's no Uncle Ben.
Yes.
In the MCU, and
he's been dead. But he wasn't a loss. He wasn't the Spider-Man creating loss.
So Peter is inherently he was inherently a good kid without it, but he's still right. He didn't have the loss. He doesn't have the tragedy, and he didn't have the responsibility conversation. And it was Aunt May.
He's still running around as a hero.
Yeah. Yeah.
But he hasn't morally gone through that. And the other 2 Peters have. And they mention it because they mention it right after they meet Tom's Peter, because he's just gone through the death of Aunt May. And that the sequence, the design of the Aunt May death, I think was incredible, because you have all the villains in the apartment, and as the apartment gets destroyed and Norman ruins everything, because you have these villains about to get cured, and Norman's like, you know what, the Goblin will not recede. The Goblin is a part of me, and he's the Mr. Hyde to my Dr. Jekyll.
Mm-hmm.
And Peter's spider sense goes off, and he's like, wait, something's wrong, but it's not something flying at my head. Spider sense is great when something's flying at your head because you can duck, but when the Goblin starts to rise in Norman, we don't detect it. Peter detects something, and then everything seems to slow, and it's like, oh, Norman's going to destroy the cures for these villains, and he's going to blow this apartment up, and everybody's going to run for their lives. Doc Ock gets tossed. He's been cured, but he gets tossed, and maybe they negated his cure. The Lizard's like, okay, it's party time. Let's just go. I'm going to
Electro negates it because he's electric.
Electro does.
Like, I liked you better before, so he fries the chip.
Yeah, and Electro's like, I like the energy here. I'm not going back to my world.
Yeah, he completely changed himself. He changed his body.
He's got a better power set.
Yeah.
And I do like the shading of the characters. I like how Sandman's like, hey, let's just go home. Let's get this cure and let's go home. But the Norman stuff, where he can't contain the Goblin, and the Goblin starts going after Peter and going after Aunt May, and then when he shows up in that destroyed pavilion at the base of the apartment, and he's on the glider, and he's got the bombs, and you see Aunt May, and you're just like, this is how they're going to do it. This is what Peter's going to lose in this movie, and it is huge. Loved it. He throws the bomb, and it bounces off the tips of Peter's fingers. Peter can't grab it, deflect it, throw it back, and it hits. And you know, for a while there, you're like, maybe Aunt May's fine. She's just laying there. But you and I both knew, Ian. We were like,
I know.
No, something.
I bawled.
She ain't all right. You were crying to that sequence. That scene.
Yeah.
It was such a beautiful turn of the power and responsibility speech, and I felt like she was going to give it, because at that point Peter's like, you know what, all bets are off. I'm going to kill the bastard. Green Goblin got away. Aunt May's dying. I'm going to kill him.
Well, what was really smart was, first of all, so they had her work at Feast, which is out of the comics.
And I love that. I love that she's like, come meet me down at the Feast shelter.
And it was smart because it shows, we hadn't seen that yet, but it shows she's about giving back to community. And so once you see that her giving that speech is consistent. And frankly, what it shows you is that's why he was already this decent, good kid who's already giving back before he even had the responsibility thing. It didn't take the classic Spider-Man origin that, he's fed up with being stepped all over, because in the MCU with May, in a modern world, it's like, you know what? He was raised right and he's a decent kid, until he could have gotten very dark from losing her, and it took the others, right?
Yeah, the other two Peters say, hey, I lost my Uncle Ben, and you can't go down this road. And they both say why. And I think that scene on the rooftop of the school is like a pretty amazing. That's a beautiful scene right there.
Yeah.
The writing from this point on, it's both the comedy stuff and the character stuff. This is where you just really fall in love with this movie, because I love the treatment of Doc Ock. I love the treatment of the villains. But when you start getting the three Peters together,
three of them together,
it's a celebration of the last 20 years, like you said, and course correction resolutions for a lot of those stories. Not to say they're culminations of those movies. I think, if anything, this made Jonathan, who doesn't like the Amazing Spider-Man movies, want to see another Amazing Spider-Man Andrew Garfield movie. I've always wanted to see another Tobey movie.
I like the idea that we don't see it, but the idea is he was really dark after that, and it probably wouldn't have felt like. No,
Andrew was, yes. Tobey was just a good dancer.
That he was like very much an avenging Spider-Man who was dark and scaring people, and it was bad. And this is, he's straightened his head out now,
Well, he also gets a chance to do something that he didn't do in Amazing Spider-Man 2. He saves MJ in the same way that he failed Gwen. And I think that's an incredible piece of writing. When you see MJ fall and Tom can't get to her and Andrew does, I love it. I love it so much.
It was happening. You knew.
You knew it was happening.
You
knew Andrew was going to be the one to save her. You knew it was going to be so redemptive for him. And it was a beautiful moment when he puts him on the ground. And he's like, are you okay? And she's like, are you okay? And he's like, I am okay. And that dark, vengeful Spider-Man can now go away.
Yeah.
Not only, but he was also going, he said, I'm not a good Spider-Man. That might have been the fan opinion for a while. But I never thought he was a bad Spider-Man. I thought it was bad material, or just not Spider-Man material. But this movie redeems those Amazing Spider-Man movies in such a beautiful way. And if you don't have those movies at the way you had those movies, you don't get this. Yeah, and this was incredible. Andrew Garfield was a highlight of this movie for me.
Oh, he was fantastic.
It was always good to see Tobey. I was always going to enjoy seeing Tobey, because I love those Raimi
Tobey
movies.
Was great. Even the call out that he had his problems with his MJ, but they made it work out is great.
And what about the joke of, I'm a member of the Avengers, and they have no idea what the Avengers are. They're like, are you in a band? Is that a band?
Yeah. Oh, it's so funny. Yeah, because in their world, it's just him.
Just Spidey.
There's nothing else.
Just Spidey and his rogues doing their thing.
It's great. It's
so
absolutely great.
That last sequence, they got to go try and cure these villains. And the problem is they've waited too long. Doctor Strange shows up, and the cracks in the multiverse are showing. And now all the villains that know who Peter is from all
Now,
the multiverses,
now wait a
not just
second.
the
Wait a
ones we
second.
witnessed in the films.
But since
But
you mentioned Doctor Strange getting there, let's just talk about the fact that you have a throwaway line about, oh, Ned maybe has some magic, in his family, and then he can fully use the sling ring.
it takes a while to get the sling ring, but then he
But
got
he's
the sling
using
ring.
it. Doctor,
He uses it.
you're opening
And,
portals. Like, how long did it take
yeah.
Doctor Strange to do it?
And
Remember?
not only that, but the
Doctor
cape.
Strange
The
did.
cape
It took him a
saves him.
while.
The cape saves Ned, and when he touches ground, he's got his sorcerer cape on. And I'm like, okay, Ned, we'll see you soon. We'll see you as a sorcerer soon, buddy. I'm skipping it, but going back to when Peter first shows up to the Sanctum Sanctorum and it's covered in snow because they opened up a sling ring, in a blizzard. They have at least one of the characters from the Doctor Strange comics sitting there shoveling snow. Don't you think that the one of the two students that was sitting there shoveling snow was reminiscent of the one that's currently in the comics as Strange's assistant?
Well, that's not even anymore. She ended up over in Strange Academy.
Strange Academy, right?
Yeah. So,
but look at the character I wanted to see show up, and
you want the dog.
Sam Raimi, you still have a chance. Let's get us that ghost dog. Let's go.
Yeah,
I want that Basset Hound, that glowy green Basset Hound.
Yeah.
Okay, so that end sequence, you start to see the filament of all the filament of the multiverse starting to crack, and you start to see silhouettes of other Spider-Man villains showing up. The ones that I noticed that were awesome, where you see Rhino, you see Kraven with a spear.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I caught Kraven.
I caught Kraven. I caught Rhino.
And I love that Andrew Garfield called out the Rhino of it, because that Rhino was terrible.
We saw that scene. Yeah. There was one more that I had seen. A scorpion. You see a scorpion in there. Did you notice anybody else silhouetted in that?
I'd like to take time with that. I'm looking forward to it. I'll watch it. Maybe I may end up with a screener or something, and maybe I'll freeze frame it.
Yeah, because they were about to get bathed.
Yeah, there's a bunch in there.
And I would definitely like to see a list of who's in there. I'd like to see the movie again in a few weeks. I'll wait for tickets to, I'll wait for seats to become a little more empty. But I'd love to see this movie again. I loved it so much. Okay, so you have that end portion on the fallen Liberty Shield from the Statue of Liberty. And you really think, Tom's trying to kill Norman Osborn.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he's going to kill him.
He's going to kill him. And he's going to impale him with the Goblin Glider. And you're like, how do you stop him? Well, 2 Spider-Men stop him. And Toby stops him.
Yeah.
And I love that Toby stops him. And he saves the
and
villain.
Gets stabbed. And then it's like, I was so worried they were going to kill Toby.
I thought they were going to kill Tobey Maguire.
I was like, no, don't do it. Don't do it. I was so glad.
Please don't kill Toby.
I've been stabbed before. It's fine.
And he's like, are you okay? He's like, I have been stabbed before. The throwaway. Yeah, I've been stabbed before. I was like, Jesus. I like how weathered and haunted Toby's Spider-Man was in comparison to the other two. Andrews was goofy and silly and like kind of broken, but Toby's was worn out.
That veteran sense, he took everything in stride.
And
he and MJ, not just pulling the costume out right away, does what he has to do. He was just on it.
Was like, yeah. I was like, what do he say? He's like, you have a costume? You're going to go into battle as a camp counselor or something? And he's like, I always have it on. Like,
yeah,
I'm always wearing the Spider-Man suit. He doesn't have the nanotech. They do save Norman Osborn. They throw it. They cure him. Norman's going to go back. Hopefully he's still mentally sound. Ian, do we see these universes again? The Toby Spidey, the Andrew Spidey?
Listen, they're not going to do more movies of them. I don't think that's where things go, Sure. There are ways they could do things, obviously, there's other ways of exploring, whether it be comics. Maybe we see them in What If, which could be interesting. And that's the thing. And, jumping ahead to the second tag, which is the Doctor Strange the Multiverse of Madness tag.
More a trailer than a tag. Sure.
What's that?
It's more of a trailer than a tag, but yeah, I'll take it.
Yeah. Well, it seemed to me like we got very much, they paid some service to the What If episodes with the Dark Doctor Strange, right?
You see one shot of what appears to be an evil version of Doctor Strange, and if that is the evil Doctor Strange from What If, I'll wait till I see tentacles. But if that's the same character, like, holy crap, like Steven's got to. What I like about it, this is what I like about it.
You had Shumagorath in it,
Yes, and we're not going to talk about that end bit quite yet. Let's still wrap up Spidey because something huge happens at the end of Spidey that we haven't even talked about. But going forward, it changes the status quo entirely for Spidey because nobody remembers Spidey.
Right. So, and that was an interesting choice, I thought. Obviously, no one should know he's Peter, but the idea that no one remembers Peter Parker at all, I mean, listen, there's no question we knew going into this movie they were doing, Brand New Day, right? The comic book storyline.
This is the best version of Brand New Day.
Right. Where Peter wished that no one remembered his identity, and it was no one. Nobody remembered. Absolutely nobody. And at the point, everybody knew. And it included excuse me. Thank you. That included doing away with his marriage, because at the time he was married to MJ.
Yes.
And in essence, that's what they've done here. By eliminating them even knowing him, they eliminate the relationship. And so it was an interesting choice for me, because that was the thing to me that truly distinguished the Tom Holland Spider-Man from the others was, those relationships. You go back to the first Tobey movie, and I remember tearing up at the end that every time at the gravesite, when you're pretty sure that she knows, that MJ knows, and she goes to kiss him, and he says, "I can't," and it's this idea he has to be alone, and Tom Holland's Peter here makes that same decision. He looks at MJ was hurt, and it's that classic, if she's in my life, she's going to get hurt, I'm walking away.
Yeah.
And it's heartbreaking.
He kept the cup.
Yeah, but,
And he kept the Emperor.
Yeah, but at the end, what's really interesting to me is you basically put him in an apartment just like Toby's had in the second one, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's that classic, you're down to the GED, the classic comic book idea that Peter's brilliant and he can't, Spider-Man gets away with everything. He doesn't even get to graduate high school. In the comics, he graduated high school, but then it's like college takes forever, doing graduate programs, but it's always getting in the way. And, he's this brilliant kid and he can't catch a break because he's always too busy being Spider-Man. Yeah. They don't do away with Spider-Man's accomplishments because, how can you? Obviously, he's been involved with the Avengers. So, everyone remembers Spider-Man, that's made very clear by, Happy, and even down to the, how'd you know? Apparently, even the idea that May knew Spider-Man. But
yeah,
no one knows
I knew him through
Peter
Spider-Man. Yeah.
That one, I struggle with that. If it's my biggest, probably my biggest point in the movie is, listen, just with the comics and Brave New Day, it's a strain, what's MJ's memory of life before and Ned's life before? If there's no Peter Parker at all.
Where are the records of his grades? Where's his birth certificate?
Yeah, who is he? What is he? Exactly. All those things.
Is it like the Kingpin when the Purple Man wiped Matt Murdock's identity, and a Kingpin when if he sees proof of Daredevil's... They did that in the Daredevil comic where there's a panel where Kingpin looks at the file where he had Daredevil's identity
and he just can't see it. And by the way, and that's exactly what I was thinking. I think that's what it is, because obviously the things happen and it exists. You just can't see it. Now,
and Strange doesn't remember.
Now here's the thing.
Nobody remembers
Peter.
Peter
In the comics, what they did is, if Peter decided to tell anyone, it all came flooding back.
Right. And did Wolverine self-heal that ability? I know he did when House of M. Wolverine's
they never dealt with that. They never said that with Wolverine. Yeah. With Johnny Storm, he immediately knew again.
Yeah.
The Fantastic Four all ended up getting it back again. Ultimately, it was pretty much anyone who needed to. For a while, they acted like Felicia didn't know Peter's, and then she did again. MJ, of course, And and MJ's a tricky one because the idea is that he didn't tell her. She figured it out when they were so young. It's so it affects so many things in her life,
And they say
and
it
Peter.
again in this movie. Like Peter is about
She'll
to
figure
have
it out
this.
again. She says, "Yeah."
Peter's about to say, like, hey, you're not going to remember me. This spell's about to be cast. Y'all aren't going to remember me, but this is how I can protect you, and this is how we can fix everything, and y'all can get into college. And they cast the spell, and MJ, like you said, says it. She says, "Don't worry, I figured it out the first time. I'll figure it out again."
Right.
And they cast the spell, and neither she nor Ned remembers Peter.
Yeah.
And I love that scene. I love that Peter held onto the Emperor Lego figure from the first movie. I love that the Death Star Lego, the Lego Death Star is in this movie a few times. It's a nice ending, and it gives Peter a lot of places to go in the future in the MCU. I don't think they're going to replicate the drama
let's talk about
you're
costume.
Spider-Man.
I thought it was really great that, so he goes to the classic costume, and it's an homage to the other two.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
That last scene of him flipping around over the ice skating rink.
Yeah, I'm saying when he sewed his own costume, and it's
Mm-hmm.
there's no nanites in it. It's just like it, the idea of the homemade costume, which is what it always was, before you bring the MCU Tony Stark into it. But the color scheme is he's doing one, and it's a nod to his brothers, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We got a Facebook user saying, "I loved this film. I'm going to see it again." I just want to say a note: if you're commenting on our Facebook group, Geekscape Forever, and you're not a member of the Geekscape Forever Facebook group, it'll show up here as Facebook user instead of your own name. So join our Facebook group, Geekscape Forever, and be part of the conversations. We've been pretty active recently. But yeah, if you're on Facebook and you're either not friends with, I think, me and you're commenting, or not a part of Geekscape or Geekscape Forever and you're commenting, I've learned that it shows up as Facebook user, which is kind of lame. But it is what it is. Join our groups. All right. Going forward, what do you think happens to Peter in the MCU? Do we even know?
Listen,
and also, we have to talk about the hint of Miles Morales when Electro and Andrew Garfield had that conversation. He's like,
great.
Honestly, you were helping people. I thought
you're
you'd
from
be black.
Queens.
You're from Queens. I thought you'd be black. And Andrew's like, it should be a black Spider-Man, shouldn't there? And Electro's
like, you think there'd be one out there? Yeah, that was great.
We're getting.
And that's the other thing, I mean, listen, they set that up back in Homecoming. Mm-hmm. We get the Prowler. We get Miles' uncle.
Yeah, I can't wait to see that.
Yeah, that was great. Look, he's Spider-Man. He's living in Manhattan. He has an apartment. It's he's out of high school. He's getting the GED. They've gotten past what they set out to do initially with this, the Tom Holland movies was the Spider-Man in high school thing. You and I've talked about this. I remember being really worried they were going to give a few movies to him being in high school. In the comics, I mean, he graduates high school.
Issues. 14 issues, 21 issues, 19 issues.
I think it was 18 or 19. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, also at that time, Marvel Comics happened in real time. So, he started out at 15 and, it's, in under 2 years, he's 17. You go on 18. So,
well, Kevin Feige and Amy Pascal spent the past weekend in this huge box office talking about how they're going to keep going with Tom Holland's Spider-Man. And
I mean, it's the plan without a deal actually.
I know, but but there wasn't a deal in place really after Far From Home.
Right.
So here we have this talk of another Spider-Man trilogy. Maybe these are the college years. But is this where we start to get the Tombs and Scorpion Sinister Six, where we start to see a version of Electro and Sandman here in the MCU?
They definitely set that up, right, in Homecoming, and we haven't seen it since. Mm-hmm. And I think that was probably the biggest disappointment of what Far From Home was, and this just picking that up, right? I mean, ostensibly, that's happening in the background.
And we can get into the post-credits now, because it seems like, just real quickly, Doctor Strange is going to avoid that, because I was really looking forward to seeing the continuation of the No More Sorcerers conversation that they had in the tag at the end of Doctor Strange. And I was like, oh, no, wait, they're going with WandaVision and the whole multiverse thing. Where's Mordo going to fit into this? No, Mordo's in there. And Mordo's all about it. And Mordo found his own Doctor Strange, evil Doctor Strange. And I was super into that during the trailer for Doctor Strange 2. But really, we should talk about this Venom scene that's midway through the credits.
So, I was a little disappointed in that.
I mean,
having gotten what we did in Venom, I get why. You know, it's arguably would have been messy, right? I mean, it was just a little
Would have been
Sony.
messy, but we wanted to see it.
Yeah, we wanted to see it.
We wanted to see it, and it was like,
it's the
psych,
same
we're
thing.
sending Venom back.
So they leave a little glue of it so you can get these essentially same symbiote.
Is Danny Rojas going to be Venom?
Look, here's the thing: is they can do Eddie Brock. They can do anything they want. There can be a Tom Hardy Eddie Brock variant in the MCU.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, because by the way, because wouldn't
Topher
that make
Grace
sense?
Variant.
But I'm just saying that wouldn't it make sense that symbiote would look for his Eddie? I mean,
yes, it's a part of the
They can
Eddie.
do it if they want to do it. So that's what they've done. That's what they've set up.
So they dumped a piece of the Venom symbiote into the MCU.
But
That's
at the
what
same
we get
time,
for the
they sent him back to his universe for. So I think Venom 3 is certainly that.
Venom 3 is going to be like. Do you think Morbius and Kraven and all this stuff shows up in Venom 3?
Maybe. Here's the thing. I mean, I do not think. I could be wrong, of course. I do not think that the next Tom Holland Spider-Man movie is Venom. Even though they set that up there, I don't think that's what they do.
And maybe it's that Sinister Six deal.
Yeah, it could be that. I'd like to see that. I want them to pick up that thread. I mean, they set that up in the first one. But that's the question. We're going to get Peter again, Tom Holland's, Peter again in a Marvel movie.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Does that introduce Miles? I think it's time. I think it's a chance to introduce a Miles into the MCU. There's an opening.
I don't think they do that in the next Marvel movie. If anything, I think you do that in the next Spider-Man, Tom Holland movie.
Right.
What's really interesting is, the question is the Avengers, right? I think, we've discussed this a number of times. I think we're going to get Thunderbolts. I think it's going to look more like Dark Avengers. Where they have similar concepts. And obviously, I think, we're going to get Champions, which is going to look like Young Avengers,
Mm-hmm.
I think both of those things are coming. I don't think we're getting them next year. I think they're taking their time building those things, and they're both a couple of years away,
And Champions could be a Miles thing.
Yeah, easily.
Yeah.
Exactly. Because, I mean, Miles is actually in Champions, right?
Yeah, we're getting Miss Marvel.
But I'm saying that's Miss Marvel. That's the Kid Nova. We haven't gotten that yet. We're getting
Kate Bishop,
mm-hmm. Hawkeye, we're getting all these, I think we're probably, going to get there to get Patriot as well, who is the grandson of
Isaiah
Elijah
Bradley
and Captain America.
So. We're also getting
Stature.
We're also having an introduction in Doctor Strange too. We're getting America Chavez.
America Chavez, yeah. Exactly.
Right. So we're going to get the Young Avengers.
Yeah. But I think they go with Champions because we wouldn't.
Meanwhile, we're getting Yelena and we're getting all the different John Walker. We're getting the Dark Avengers over there. So that Doctor Strange.
Again, I think that'll call that Thunderbolts. And I think the way they'll do that is they'll have Thunderbolt Ross involved.
Okay. And now we've got this Doctor Strange 2 teaser. What did that tell you? There's a lot of stuff going down, but it looked like they're going to give Wanda a little bit of a hero aspect instead of she broke and she went bad.
I mean, all the rumors were they'd have her be the bad guy, but I mean,
Mordo's definitely positioning himself as a bad guy in that trailer.
It certainly is, but what's Wanda going to want? Here's the thing. By the way, speaking of Young Avengers / Champions, mm-hmm. Wanda wants her kids.
Right. And I've heard that both kids are cast in
but that doesn't mean they don't grow up in it.
Right.
Just because I know.
Oh no, those kids grew up in like 2 seconds.
So the point is that the fact that they have the kids from WandaVision are going to show up in the movie doesn't mean they don't become fully adult or more adult. Although already, I mean, even at that age, I mean, it's a teenage thing. We're already pretty much getting there, right?
And they could be champions.
Yeah. So, but that's what she wants, and I think there's no way that she's not going to get it. The question is whether or not anyone's going to have an issue with that.
Right. And if the multiverse is in peril, I think Steven would have a problem with that. And then you have a bit of an adversary, and you got Mordo there stoking the flames.
Right. But that dark Doctor Strange, the idea that he exists,
It was cool.
Yeah.
But then again, Marvel does this. Marvel will be like, "Hey, it's Quicksilver, but maybe this Doctor Strange is a illusion. The evil Doctor Strange could be an illusion. It could be manipulation by Mordo. It doesn't necessarily have to be the one that we saw currently. And what if that one's trapped?
That destroyed his whole universe.
But that one's also trapped in a prism, trying to contain Super Ultron and Killmonger. Correct?
Yes.
So his presence here would be like, oh, by the way, I wasn't watching the shop, and Killmonger and Super Ultron got hooked.
But we know we always know that that's a road that Steven can go down.
Yeah.
So that's the tricky thing, right?
So Ian, check your notes. What else is there to talk about this Spider-Man No Way Home, which is definitely one of my top 3 MCU movies of all time.
So I mean, I think we covered, but the idea of Toomes in Morbius, it's probably a variant. I think that's the way they would go about things.
Keep it clean.
Going forward. Yeah.
I hope not. I mean, I like the idea of these things keeping a little more consistent, but Sony will Sony. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think Kevin Feige's involved in movies like the Morbius. He's just kind of like, oh, okay. Well, y'all threw us a curveball. Right. Venom 2 threw them a curveball, and that curveball got cleaned up a little too tidy for me. But yeah, the Toomes, hey Doc, or whatever he says to Morbius in the trailer, like, I'd like to think that there's only one Toomes, because I liked
the character was great.
It was great. It was the best iteration of Adrian Toomes.
Oh, absolutely. So we'll see what they do with that.
Okay. When's that movie come out, Adrian? When's that movie come out?
January. I think it's a couple weeks into January.
It's like the 18th, right?
I think so. Something like that.
So we're gonna see it real quickly after the break.
Yeah, we'll see it. We'll cry.
Oh, Ian, you and I are going to go to that Thursday night screening of it. We'll be sitting next to each other talking some trash.
Yeah, we will.
Maybe we'll love it. Maybe they will love it.
Look, we're going with low expectations, right?
Sadly we are. Now what else is there to talk about? Because we are getting a second season of What If.
Yep.
We're not getting it this year. We're maybe getting it later this
year. We'll have the finale of Hawkeye.
That's when you'll see Ian and I next. Finale of Hawkeye. We've got Morbius. In May, early May, that first Marvel weekend, we've got Doctor Strange 2. Are we missing out? We got She-Hulk coming.
Oh, can't wait for that.
We have Miss Marvel coming. And we got the one that was inspired by you. Is it true that this one's inspired by you in your Krav Maga training? Moon Knight?
I don't think so. No.
Moon Knight wasn't inspired by you?
No.
Were you inspired by Moon Knight?
No.
You weren't at any point that you're doing Krav Maga. You're not pretending to be Moon Knight.
Well, I don't think I'm a reincarnated avatar of an Egyptian god. So
okay, like Ian, you might have to when we do the Moon Knight special, you're definitely going to have to do a little more heavy lifting on this one, because Moon Knight is a blind spot for me in a lot of ways with the Marvel universe, because it's kind of like when you did with the Eternals. Like, I don't think that there's any specific run of Eternals or Moon Knight that
Eternals
I'm like, that's the story.
If Eternals has a few, and by the way, the current Eternals book is definitely worth reading. You know
what, Ian? I got 4 issues into that, and I love the Issa Ribic artwork. I loved it. Could not continue reading it because the story was so.
I'm enjoying the Thanos stuff a lot.
Okay, Jim Paganelli, who refuses. Jim's doing this wrong. He's watching the Geekscape special with all the spoilers before he actually saw Spider-Man No Way Home. But he did jump in and say Ian is one of Moon Knight's hidden personalities. Oh, well, that explains it.
Hidden really, really well.
Yeah. And the Darkseid 9117, because he's the Darkseid, is like, I'm going to give it an unpopular opinion about this movie. Yeah, hit us with it whenever you want. Ian, what were you going to say about Moon Knight? Because you're going to have to fill it in on me, fill it in for me. Because
no, well, listen,
that's where I don't feel like it has an iconic storyline.
We'll get into it. No, Moon Knight, there's never really been this is the comic story of Moon Knight you have to read.
Right.
But, but I'm looking forward to that show. Oscar Isaac, I think, will be great. So we'll see what they do with it.
I'm looking forward to all of it. I'm always looking forward to
a lot of good stuff coming.
I'm looking forward to sitting down next to you.
But this movie, Morbius. After Eternals, this movie redeemed a lot. It was really great.
And Eternals is a movie that we were conflicted about. it's still a movie that I like. You'd have to go back in the feed to see what we thought about it. But I'm glad
Eternals
it
just should have been so
exists.
much better than it
It
was.
just was kind of messy, a little
Yeah, a
messy.
lot of missed opportunities.
And this movie, The No Way Home, could have been very messy with all this multiverse switcheroo going on, and it was beautiful.
You know, my
terrible
fear about
thing.
this movie was that it would be too dense for people that didn't inside out know every other Spider-Man movie. And from what I hear from people, it wasn't. It was, you know, just because it's emotionally sound and, you know, and listen, there's enough exposition.
Okay.
You understand who everyone is.
Well, Ian, Darksage 9117 is back, and he has his opinion for you, and he's going to drop it. Okay, so I'm going to share it with everybody. Are you ready, Ian, for this?
Sure.
I hated this film. As an avid reader of Marvel and DC comics, only change characters if you absolutely need to, or there is a viable reason to. This was not Spider-Man. I understand the need to appeal to a wider
How was it
audience.
not Spider-Man?
You stop. Hold on. Darksage is still writing. I understand the need to appeal to a wider audience, but as a comic book fan, what they did here was wrong, and it ruined Spider-Man. He continues with, I'm just assuming it's a he. And yes, I understand they are taking liberties at points. I am fine with what it is if it is needed. Thanos, I was fine with in his story arc for Infinity War. There's a comma, so I think he's still rocking and raging. Let's see what he continues with. But Ian, why don't you address that first part about whether or not this is Spider-Man?
I think it was true to Spider-Man. I mean, as we said earlier, you know, look, the MCU, it's a major difference to have there be no Uncle Ben, to have had Peter not have had those defining moments early in his career. You know, something we always wondered about. You know, they make a reference that, you know, Aunt May, you know, had a lot of loss, so that's about as far as they go. So now we get that, you know, we get the line. I think it's very much Spider-Man. I think him walking away, you know, from MJ at the end, it's very much Spider-Man, you know, and, you know, he's just going to sit out there to, you know, be responsible and do good because he has great power.
He is more Spider-Man.
That's very true to Spider-Man.
He is more Spider-Man in this movie.
Yeah, by the end of this movie.
I would say that these three movies are his origin story.
That's what I'm saying, exactly.
Because in two, he's like, I'm ready to just give this crap up so I can be with MJ. Go ahead and take it, guy from other universe who I haven't even researched. And
yeah, exactly. Like, you get a classic interpretation consistent with comic book version of Spider-Man when you get to the end of this movie.
And in two, he's almost completely irresponsible. In the second movie, he's almost completely irresponsible.
Yeah,
the first
he's
movie
just a dumb kid who doesn't have the sense of responsibility. That's exactly right.
Okay. Oh, hey, Darksage. We should just have him on the show. He says, I will explain my defense. I mean, he could have just typed his defense.
Yeah.
But he could have typed it, but he said, no, I will explain it. Okay, I hope that you're typing furiously, Darksage 9117. Or maybe, you know what? If you're on Facebook, just join our group and talk to Ian there. Or maybe find him on Twitter. Twitter's really good at the negative stuff. Like, why don't you just like tell Ian he's wrong on Twitter? That's what Twitter's for. Ian is hydrating right now, if you're listening to this, in preparation for a rebuttal to Darksage 9117. But so far, I don't think either of us have agreed with Darksage 9117. But we respect your opinion, Darksage 9117. And thanks for watching Geekscape. Ian doesn't respect. I respect that you're watching, and I do appreciate that you're throwing in your opinion. I like that you're talking to us.
Sure, but say something substantive. I feel like there was just a general statement and with nothing behind it.
Yeah, no, he was very Spider-Man in this movie, more so than I think in the first two. You know, he's grown into Spider-Man in this film. When he puts that box down in his empty apartment and he's ready to reset his life.
And by the way, and what's Spider-Man. More Spider-Man than his whole, no, they can't just go back and, you know, and die, and we can't just accept that. What's more Spider-Man than that?
If it was Batman, he would have found a way to, like, cripple them. It's like, oh, technically they're not dead, but I crippled them and they're never going to walk again, and I'm going to throw them in a revolving door of an asylum. But, yeah, Batman just makes villains. He's like, here you go. All right, Darksage, we're going to try and wrap up the show, and I'd hate to not allow you to have your defense. But well, there it is. Here it comes. He was close to Tony Stark in this movie and oftentimes had the advantage of working alongside others. Did he do that in the comics? Yeah, he did. He did. It's Fantastic Four number 3 or 4, where Spider-Man's a part of that comic, or is that an Amazing Spider-Man issue where the Fantastic Four show up? At times, yes, but only when he absolutely had to. I actually think that Spider-Man actually interacts with the Marvel comics in the comics a lot. I think
In Amazing
actually,
One, he first interacts with Fantastic Four. No, he interacts with everybody all the time. And they established really early that they have, even though they don't have him tell him his identity, but he's good friends with the Human Torch.
He and Johnny are like best friends.
Years. Yeah.
Yeah. Christian Blatt said it. He corrected me, and Christian Blatt, who you should definitely listen to his Blattcast. I love Christian. He's a really, really great resource. He says Fantastic Four and an Amazing Spider-Man #1. That's it. You see him on the cover.
Is literally Spider-Man
in a tube.
And
they're fighting the Chameleon. Is that right? Ian, the Chameleon was the villain in that Spider-Man issue #1.
Yeah. I think so.
Yeah, what Ian said. Christian's got your back, Ian. Okay, Darkseid has another comma, but we can't keep waiting. What you should be doing is you should keep subscribing to Geekscape. You can find us on all the platforms. We're free, so share us with your friends. If you missed our live show on Friday night, go watch the live show or go listen to the live show. We're going to have a really nice edited version of the live show that we shot from multi-cameras up later in January on the Geekscape TV channel. You may be watching this on our YouTube channel at Geekscape TV. Awesome. Thanks for subscribing. Tell your friends about it. We put videos up all the time. If you're like DarkSage9117 and you're watching on Twitch, thank you. That's awesome too. Share it with your friends. And if you're on Facebook, join Geekscape Forever, that Facebook group. We got some great conversations going on. Also, the Geekscape page is a great place to find out what's going on. I'd love to do another live show in the next few months, so I'll start planning that. We're also going to hopefully be returning to San Diego Comic-Con this summer. We have already paid for the booth. I think we'll be at WonderCon. There's just a lot going on in Geekscape, but I can't list it all. But Ian will be back in about a week after Christmas to talk all things Hawkeye once that series concludes on Disney Plus. We're loving it. And Christian, I don't know. Christian just backed me up. He said, yes, the Chameleon was the villain in Amazing Spider-Man #1. So Jonathan does know a lot of his stuff. I'm about a mile wide and an inch thick, like deep on a lot of my geek stuff. It's a little bit of everything. Okay. Subscribe to Geekscape. Share Geekscape with your friends. Maybe explore some of the other shows on the Geekscape network. Listen to the Blattcast from Christian Blatt. He's been a longtime friend. And Ian, where can they find you? On Twitter? Can Dark Sage pick this conversation up on Twitter with you?
I mean, I go on there sometimes. Best thing is whatever, do it through Geekscape stuff. I'll see it.
Okay. All right. I think we're going to propose a cage match between Dark Sage 9117 and Ian. You have your own rogues gallery growing now, Ian. Great. I think that's impressive. Okay, this has been the Geekscape Spider-Man No Way Home special. We love y'all. Tell your friends to subscribe. Keep doing all that stuff that you do to keep up with Geekscape because I really appreciate it. And we'll talk to y'all in a few days. Peace.